the method of Marxism and of Trotskyism allowed us to predict, actually with uncanny accuracy, the developments that are unfolding in Britain and throughout the world. We declared that globalization, capitalist globalization, would end in its opposite, would end in deglobalization, which is unfolding at the present time. The cooperation of the ruling class to share out an expanded pie would turn into its opposite once this boom ran out of steam. And that is unfolding at the present time. We were told that the national state has disappeared in a borderless world capitalism. The national state is striking its revenge against this idea at the present time, where the capitalists are scrambling on a national plane for advantages for themselves at the expense of their rivals on the world market. Where, for instance, The Economist carried an article recently that said, whereas it cost roughly £2,000 to transfer goods from one part of the world to the other, if you wanted to hire a container ship in China and bring the container ship back to Europe, the rates for that ship would be zero. We have the Swiss government openly declaring the defence of its currency in the last couple of days, which is the outline of a possible trade war and a possible outbreak of protectionism that could aggravate the position of world capitalism in the period that we're going into. This method allowed us to outline the incapacity of world capitalism, despite all the claims of its supporters, to satisfy the requirements of the peoples of the world in terms of goods and the delivery of these goods. Our criticisms were not personal. Of course, the individual representatives of the system earned the legitimate scorn and hatred of the working class. None less than Thatcher, in this, the 25th anniversary of the beginnings of the miners' strike, of the visceral hatred which still exists because of the harm that was done. I've mentioned this before, but I'll mention this at this conference today. My own father-in-law, no longer with us, woke up during that strike and said very simply, has anybody shot her yet? And I would say, well, look, we're not in favour of the terrorists. I know, but has anybody dispatched her where she should go? Of course, we're not in favour of terrorism. But that very same thought was actually echoed in a report of a so-called moderate miner in the Daily Mirror in the course of the last period. But we're not opposed to this system on the basis purely of the hatred of individual representatives of the system. We're opposed because it cannot deliver the goods. It's a system which intrinsically demonstrates its waste, and particularly in a crisis, demonstrates its destructive capacity. Look at what's happened in the last 12 to 18 months. I can't deal with this now. But two reports have appeared in the press. One by Hamish McRae, the industrial economic editor of The Independent, that simply makes the following point. Around 1/3 of the accumulated wealth of the world has been destroyed. He then goes on to say that it will take 10 years to recapture the loss of this wealth. That's very mild. The Asian Development Bank produced a report carried earlier this week in the Financial Times that says the total loss from this crisis will be $50,000 billion, £35,000 billion, which is the equivalent of the total production of the world in a single year. Could there be a more devastating criticism of the system? As Marx pointed out, overproduction was unknown in previous, it was an absurdity in previous systems to capitalism itself. It will be an absurdity once the working class has taken power and established a socialist Britain and a socialist world itself. It's not just the crude figures. Alistair Darling can write an article and say, this crisis will result in 90 million people extra being made poor in the third world. The ILO, the International Labour Organization, at least 30 million workers, our class, will be made unemployed, thrown out onto the streets as a result of this crisis itself. But nevertheless, even we, as in a sense the most conscious section of the organised labour and trade union movement, not even we, envisage the depth and the speed at which this crisis has developed. By the way, it's a little bit of a misnomer to even talk about the speed, because this crisis has been slow burning, really, since the end of 2006, but the speed of the last 6 months has been particularly dramatic. It has resulted, I would say, we don't express this in this way in the documents, in a demoralisation or a semi-demoralisation of the ruling class at the present time that should give us, the opponents of the system, enormous encouragement in the battle that we're going into. Because this is what was carried by the head of one of the big banks, Merrill Lynch, in a statement in the last couple of days. He made the point, the following point. Not only is the financial system plagued, but also the real economy. That has left everyone, from the finance minister or central banker to the small investor or pension holder, bereft of an intellectual compass, dazed and confused. This is the most important point. Our world is broken, and I honestly don't know what is going to replace it. The compass by which we steered as Americans is gone. The last time I ever saw anything like this, in terms of the sense of disorientation and loss, was amongst my friends in Russia when the Soviet Union broke up. That's not from Marxists. That's from the spokesman of the system itself. And it's an ideological concern as well, because not only are they saying that our system is broken, but as the shadow that was in the Bible, like a cloud on the horizon, they can see the forces that are maturing that can exploit this situation, namely of socialism and Marxism. And that's why Larry Summers, the main financial advisor of Obama, has said there will be those who, just as in the 1930s, tried to learn the lesson that market capitalism didn't work and needed to be replaced with an entirely different model. I don't think that's right, he said. That's his argument. Well, we'll see on the basis of the movements that will take place in the next period. Not one sector of an economy, especially in Britain, not one country, not one region, not one sphere of the world has remained untouched by the effects of this crisis. This has led, incredibly, even in a sense, outcompeting us to the direst predictions of world capitalism, of the ideologues of world capitalism today. We've had, for instance, Alistair Darling saying, this is the worst crisis in 60 years. He was outbid by Ed Balls, who said, no, this is the worst crisis for 100 years. Then we have the head of the National Intelligence Agency in America saying, the economic collapse already looms as the most serious one in decades, if not centuries. We're not even saying that, by the way. All we can say, we can make one conclusion, if they're saying that, it's bad. It's really bad. And the working class, unfortunately, will pay for